Hello everyone, it's Richard Lewis here again with another video. This is a video I suspected I was always going to have to make at some point or write about. I've tried recording this this is like the sixth or seventh attempt now. It's a very emotional subject for me, and I'm going to try and be as succinct as possible in this video, but you've got to understand there's no real way to tell this story quickly. I'm doing it all from memory and without notes and specific dates and the minutia in front of me. But as some of you will know by now, Maria Creveling, the former Renegades player and former LCS player who I live with now, I look after her. She is someone I care about very deeply. We live together in Atlanta. She put some posts out the other day talking about her time in Renegades and her relationship with the owner, Chris Badawi. And a lot of people have been waiting upon me for years, ever since she left the team, to kind of break the silence and speak out about the stuff that went on there. It was never my place to do that. You have to understand that Maria is somebody who has been victimized. She's somebody who has been disenfranchised. And part of the regaining of power and self-worth, however you want to assess it, is at least being able to control when her story comes out, in the manner in which it comes out. And I respect her, therefore I respect those wishes. Now that she's been very public and very vocal about the stuff, I can come out and basically supplement what she said by giving my own take. Now, it's worth stating plain right off the top. I'm not going to talk about any of the other stories that come out from the Renegades house for the same reason. I will say Maria wasn't the only player in a bad situation. She wasn't the only person I saw in positions I don't think were appropriate, or things that were happening that I certainly don't think were safe. It's not on me to, again, tell those stories. And I'll also add that a lot of people have tried to embroil Monte Cristo into all of this. He's now an Overwatch commentator, their principal piece of talent. You could say the voice of Overwatch. And it's got to be noted, I don't even think he set foot in the Renegades house during the entire time he owned the team. He was in South Korea the entire time, a completely different time zone. He was incredibly busy with his job. He completely entrusted Chris Badawi to run the team responsibly. So this isn't an indictment of Monte Cristo in any way. I'm not going to get embroiled in trying to target other people. Ultimately, Monty's biggest mistake was trusting Chris to be a responsible adult, which he most certainly was not. Also, as well, I just want to clarify, it has been stated by Chris in the past, who I think is a bit of a faulty narrator in all of this, that I spent virtually no time in the house. This, I think he said I was there for a total of 8 days. This is patently false. This can be backed up by any player who was in that team, all of their staff members. The only person who will say I was in there for a short period of time would be Chris Badawi himself. And I don't want to get into the habit of dredging up Skype logs from years ago to incriminate people. I don't think that's a particularly professional thing to do. I don't like to share stuff that's said in private. It rankles me when people do it. That being said, I will show you a short extract from a conversation that will act as proof, I think, to show that the amount of time I was in there for. You can see here, I was criticizing him for saying I stayed 8 days in the house. This is on July 27, 2016. And he said, you weren't there for 5 weeks. And I said, I was there for my birthday, which is on the 11th of January. And I was also there for Maria's, which is in February. So you can see immediately, at least a span of a month, where I was in and out of the house, and I pointed this out to him and said I was there over. I said, which is all I ever said, I was there over a period of the first 5 to 6 weeks of the season. I had a gap in between. I went to Bucharest to work an event, I believe, the European Minor for CSGO, for PGL, so people can check the dates on that. And Chris apologized because he wanted to kind of discredit what I was saying by saying I wasn't there for 5 weeks every day in total. In actual fact, I would probably put it at the amount of time spent as like over 3 calendar weeks, closer to 4 if we had to come to a total day count. And it was clearly enough time to see some pretty heinous shit. Right, so let's talk a little bit also about some facts, some establishment, because in the League of Legends subreddit, where facts don't really have mileage and aren't held in any high regard, and Maria's been lied about, and I've been lied about. Let's establish this. It's been said that I cannot be trusted because I have had a long-term relationship, friendship with Maria. Now, this isn't true. In fact, I will tell you when I first started to contact Maria, but we never met until I went to the Renegade's house. That was when we met in person for the first time. I had met Chris before Maria. Ever since Chris came into esports, me and him had a back and forth relationship. I didn't like some of the shit he did, but I also could see how he was being targeted by other managers. Equally as well, I've seen a lot of these team owners and other people come out and go, oh, we all knew Chris Badawi was a bad egg, as if poaching their players is somehow equivalent of him mistreating his own players. The reason that those team owners didn't like Chris from the start, sure, was that he was swaggering around, trying to pick up people's players, doing tortious interference or whatever the fuck you want to call it. But they were also incredibly worried about him being funded by Martin Shkreli, because that was the word on the street at the time. They thought Martin Shkreli was going to fund him, and they didn't like the idea of a billionaire coming in and funding a League of Legends team and disrupting the fabric and boosting salaries. So they all ganged up on him to basically push him out as an owner and get him into trouble with Riot. That's all there is to it. They can say differently now, but I am telling you, these are the facts. I'm not going to completely renounce all of my support during that time for Chris Badawi, because that would be disingenuous of me. That would make me a liar and a bit of a fraud. That's not who I am. So, how did I meet Maria? Okay, let's talk about bullying. I fucking hate it, and I know people like to call me a bully. I know what it's like to be bullied and abused and beaten and mistreated by bigger people, stronger people. And I reached a point in my life where I said, I'm never going to allow that to happen to me or anyone I care about ever again. I am never going to be a victim, and I will just meet anybody I think is trying to denigrate me. I will just meet them head to head. And when I was working in League of Legends, I heard a lot about this player, Maria, who was obviously under a different name back then. And I was doing like podcasts like First Blood and writing stories about League of Legends. And there was people that I thought were cool people, like good people in the scene. And they were all engaging in this bullying because she was different. Now, I will say this, there is nothing more sickening to me in bullying terms than transphobia, because it is bullying that comes under the guise of benevolency. These people say you're mentally ill if you're trans. You cannot be trusted to make your own decisions, and we care about you, and because we don't want you to hurt yourself, so we are going to abuse you until you see sense. It is fucking grotesque. I absolutely cannot abide people that engage in that. I have always told people in my audience who engage in that to fuck off. I want nothing to do with that, because you will not find a group of people in society that face the challenges and the problems that this group has, and then on top of that they have these fucking scumbags that want to say, we're going to bully you, we're going to make you feel abnormal because we want you to be normal. It is so repellent to me. And when I heard that this was happening to Maria, and she went through some of the most horrendous bullying I have ever seen in esports history by her fellow professionals, by her colleagues and her peers. And it all started, by the way, one guy actually doxed her and released private and sensitive information into the League of Legends scene, because back when she was an amateur player, she didn't want to play on a gold team. She wanted to play on a high-level team, and she said she was leaving. So one player leaked a bunch of personal information about her into the public domain, which people have been using to bully her to this day. It is mind-blowingly sickening to me, and I can't believe it. I couldn't tolerate it, and I stopped talking to pretty much anyone who was engaged in that. There were people who I thought were all right, and they weren't all right, and they were taking part in this, and I just severed ties and didn't talk to them. So I first reached out to Maria when that was going on. I have no idea when it would be. I want to say 2013. But I reached out to her, and I just wanted her to know that not everybody in the scene was a schoolyard bully. Not everybody was like that. So I just messaged her and said, I know you're having a tough time. It's not fucking cool, but these people are not representative of who we are in esports. And if you ever need a friend, someone who will fucking go out and fight for you, I will do that, because I do not want to see somebody like you get crushed under the weight of this bullshit. And that's how we met. So, fuck. Sorry, it's emotional to talk about. So, anyway, we talked a lot about her life, and she was like estranged from her parents because they didn't understand it, and she went to college, and she was bullied there, and blackmailed, and and she was suffering from depression and anxiety, and she couldn't leave her room, and she had League of Legends. She had League of Legends as a way to escape, and she was good at the game. And this is what she wanted to do. She wanted to be pro. She wanted to just have a life where she could exceed what had been mapped out for her. And it was super important to her. She was in control when she was playing League of Legends. She felt fucking great about it. And she had to drop out of college. It wasn't tenable for her to continue. She was really being treated badly and couldn't cope with a lot of the stuff that was going on. She didn't have a support network. And she ended up living in pretty awful conditions with her then girlfriend. And her girlfriend didn't contribute to the rent and had her own issues. So Maria was kind of a breadwinner at this time, and she had to make money any way she could. And here's what I will say. She met Chris, who offered to recruit her to a team and support her, and he got her out of the house and made a team house. And this is the thing. I don't think Badawi is evil. You'll see a lot of people on Reddit, and they will talk in binary terms. And they will say, this person is evil, this person, you're either right or you're wrong. And the reality is, Chris got her out of a bad situation, and a very bad situation, and gave her the opportunity to be in a good situation. And I loathe the Reddit mentality of either somebody is entirely good or entirely evil. The people who think this way are children, and they love that they're anonymous and they get to talk about this shit in the way they do, because they don't they know they won't be held accountable for the one fuck up of their life, and they would hate it if somebody did that to them, but meanwhile they will do it to other people. Now, Badawi meant well initially, no doubt about it. He gave Maria a great opportunity. Where I start to take issues with Chris was very quickly he inserted himself into Maria's life and started to learn all about her, and then decided that what he wanted to do was, in her mind, complete her. It was so emotionally manipulative that he promised her, right? The one thing Maria wanted, because she thought it was going to fix everything, was this surgery, and she would have done anything to get this at the time. And Chris said, I will give it to you if you come and work for me. Now, I've seen a lot of people say, well, that sounds like a really good arrangement. Let's talk about power dynamics. This guy has literally rescued her from a terrible situation, and then has put her into one of, I will give you, I will offer you everything you want as long as you work for me. I will bind you to my vision, and I will give you what you want in return. Not just money, not just a salary, which is where the relationship shall end. I will give you something that goes to the core of your fucking being. And it is so exploitative to do that. For years, Maria thought she had exploited Chris and took advantage of his good nature. I think a lot of people told her that. She now obviously realizes, like any adult, anybody like myself who's been in positions where you have a duty of care to young adults or children. I've done, coaching, and I've worked in schools for children with developmental needs. I don't talk about any of this stuff publicly because I don't, I'm a monster, whatever, But when you've ever been in a position where you have a duty of care, the one thing you would never do is start to mix the professional and the personal. It just doesn't, not even moderately, but to that degree. It is, it just shows that Chris was just not a suitable person to manage and mentor young adults. So anyway, and let's be clear. This is what esports is like for a lot of young people. It is like a low-rent, low-budget Hollywood system where the people come to you as a young adult, and they say to you, "I will offer you your dreams. What do you want? Is it money? Is it to be a pro? Is it stardom? Is it fame?" And in this case, it was surgery on top of that. And I will give it to you, but you must come and work for me, and together we will make your dreams come true. And it's like what they do with the young stars out in Hollywood. Oh, I'll give you this part in a film, but you got to give something to me. It is disgusting. This is what I've railed against my entire life in esports. The young adults getting exploited. And I will tell you, because we've got to be honest about it, there are a lot of young adults. If you spend your life playing video games in the same way if you spend your life dedicated to sports, you will not develop social skills in other areas. And a lot of people, they're 18, even 21, that is their biological age, but it is not their age when it comes to social skills. And they're not equipped to look after themselves, and they're not equipped to make decisions that are best for them. And when I see these fucking used car salesmen come in and promise them stuff, it fucking disgusts me. It's so gross. And it happens all the time. It's a daily reality in esports. So the surgery itself should never, ever have happened the way it did. But she went and she got it. Now, to put a bit of context around the surgery, before we start getting into the specifics of what was happening in the house, Chris didn't really do any research. Now, perhaps Maria should have took point on this. I don't know. Chris wanted to do two things. He wanted to get Maria the surgery, and he wanted to do it cheaply. And the reason for this is that Chris didn't have as much money as he made out. I mean, Chris did not have. He fronted like he was multi-millionaire. I don't think he ever was. You saw in his AMA he was exposed as having lied about his legal background, that he'd never been a lawyer. I think Chris, because he had a bad accident himself where he was hit by a car and nearly killed, I think he got a sizable payout. This has always been my hunch. I think he got a sizable financial payout, and he put it all into esports. And his money was running out when he was in Renegades for sure, because he was incredibly agitated about selling the team, which is all he ever wanted to do. I remember when we were out in Vegas during CES, he interrupted a meeting. It was when I was out there working for Turner, and there was a lot. We were talking about what teams were maybe going to come into the league and who was getting spots and stuff. And he interrupted a meeting with his agent was in the room and was like really shouting and screaming, saying, "Where the fuck is my sale? You promised me sponsors. You haven't given me sponsors. You promised you would sell the team. Where the fuck is it?" And he was going bananas over not getting the money. So it was clear to me he wanted to save money on this. And he went to a person who I believe had surgery in Thailand and got a recommendation and didn't do any research beyond that recommendation. And the price was good enough for him. And that was that. They went out to Thailand. They went to some clinic. Maria told me it was dirty and horrible. I think she even got food poisoning from the food they gave her while she was out there. She was having a fucking drip put into her spine of pure morphine. And I was tweeting her during this time to make sure she was okay. And she was fucked up and you know, just a mix of like happy and sad. And then she came back to the US and basically had to go and play in LCS. She was in a lot of pain. We'll come with that. So anyway, at the point she got back, I went out to the team house because I was friends with Chris. And Chris invited me to stay and said, just come stay in the house. We'll give you a room. We'll hang out and it'll be good. Because I was moving out to America. It looked like I was going to get the E-League job. It had been floated for a while before it happened. So he invited me out to the Renegades team house and said, just stay out as long as you want and hang out. So I did. And I got there. And on day one, I sat down with Chris and I told him, you need to have all your shit together because a source inside Riot tells me they are gearing up to kick you out of the league. This will probably be your last season if you fuck up in any way, shape, or form. And that was then. That was before any of this. So he was just like, Riot will never get me. I'll beat the system. I'm so clever. Like, he just believed that he was just going to skate and cruise through the League of Legends ecosystem with no consequences whatsoever. So, the other detail about the surgery. I mean, I talk a lot about conflict of interest. I cannot think of anything more repellent than this. To get the surgery, Maria needed a psychiatrist or psychologist, I think a psychiatrist note, to say that she was of sound mind and wanted the operation. And Chris's mother just so happened to be a psychiatrist. So they just set up a meeting and Chris's mother just wrote the letter for her to get this surgery. So understand, instead of having Maria independently assessed, her mind looked at by an independent doctor, someone unrelated to the situation, Chris basically fast-tracked the letter of surgery because it behooved him, because Maria said she wouldn't play until she got the surgery. So he just fast-tracked it by using his own mother as the doctor to get the surgery. And it's just unbelievable. That to me is grossly unethical. Even if his mother completely did everything properly and above board, that connection casts doubt on whether or not that process was legitimate, for me at least. It's a very wrong picture. And anyway, while I was out there, while I was in the house, I also was super eager to see Maria because, we've been talking online on and off for years, and I bought her a big cuddly dog, and I went to see her, and immediately I could tell the person I was meeting was not in a good place. She couldn't do physical contact. Like she absolutely couldn't hug people. I tried. She recoiled, absolutely couldn't. And she didn't talk or speak to me at length. She just couldn't do it. She was just drained and strung out and emotional from the surgery. And it was just a weird situation because by day 2, I'm looking at the power dynamic in the house, and Chris is living with the players. I don't know why an owner would want to do this. He had this huge house in LA, and he lived there with the players. He had the biggest room. It was huge. He had an ensuite bathroom, and he was just living there, and other players were sharing, and there was this entourage in the house all the time. The media manager was there, and friends would come and stay, and I was doing that, right? So it was pretty wild. It just didn't look like a professional setup, and Chris would just stay awake for days. He was just popping Adderall all the time, which I'm sure he's prescribed, and he'd be smoking hookah and playing games, and just, it was just weird, guys. It was, so weird is where I started. But then, there was things that went beyond weird. For example, Maria, who had to do a lot of really personal post-operative procedures related to the surgery she just had, and it takes a while to sort of look after and do the aftercare. And she wasn't allowed a lock on the door, and the reason she wasn't allowed a lock on the door was because she had been self-harmed and was deemed unstable by the team, so they wouldn't give her a lock on the door. And Chris would just let himself into her room at any time, and she had no privacy. She just had no privacy whatsoever in the room. They said, you can't be trusted to have a lock. They never declared that she was self-harming or tried to get her any help or anything, but they wouldn't give her a lock on the door so she could do this post-surgery care. And Chris interrupted it a bunch of times, and it was just awful and super embarrassing, as I'm sure you can imagine. And oh god, just fucking makes my skin crawl. And then I was just looking at the team and how it worked, and they were worked if you ever want to know why burnout happens in the LCS, because those slots were so highly valued, managers and owners just worked their players unbelievably. I sat there, and what would happen is they would get up at 10, everybody would come up, have breakfast, and then they would immediately go down and they would start playing League. Then they would get a 1-hour break sometime in the afternoon, and then they would play more League. And the team was basically worked for 12 to 14 hours a day, every day. They were either playing games, solo queue, or doing debriefing and coaching sessions. Now, this is, again, just horrendous. That alone is an unacceptable working environment. I tried to explain this to Chris. I showed him studies of chess and how there was the grandmaster out there who would only play for 4 hours, and how there's scientific studies that show anything beyond a certain attention span won't go in, you won't improve. I compared it to athletic coaching regimens I'd been involved in, where I would show them, look at this. This is, you would not train an elite level athlete to this degree. And we actually got talking for a brief period of time about me coming in to help manage the team. I don't think Monty liked that idea. Chris liked it because it would have been the ultimate fuck you to Riot Games, because Riot Games had made me persona non grata at the time. But I was trying to move him away from working these players. Now, the only players that weren't really affected by this is Crumbs. Crumbs was just like, you know, an older guy, like, he just did his time, played his games. He would go out and stuff. And Alex Ich didn't live in the house, but everyone else was just grinding nonstop. These kids never went out. They just never left the house. In the entire time I was there, they didn't go out. They didn't have lives. It was shocking to me to see this. And I went out one day because I came and went as I pleased. But I was rapidly, the penny was starting to drop for me that this was really fucked up. And I went out one day, for example, and I bought a load of toys and board games and Nerf guns. And I was trying to break up the tedium and the mediocrity in the house and just have a bit of fun. And, you know, Chris, I don't think he liked it. I think he saw it as a criticism of what he was trying to do. And he very often said to me, like, look, you're distracting the players. You shouldn't do that. I need them focused. We are losing our LCS games, and I need us to stay in LCS. And that was the other thing. For all of Chris's posturing about how much he cared about these players, he absolutely didn't give a fuck beyond keeping the spot in LCS, and it was clear he was going to do anything to achieve that. He often said to me, like, oh, when Maria gets better, she's going to be such a great marketing tool. And I'm like, Chris, man, I don't think you know her at all. She doesn't want the limelight. She doesn't want the spotlight. And in that hour break, every day I was in the house, what would happen is Maria would come up the stairs and she would lie on the couch that I was sleeping on, and we would sit there and we would talk for an hour, and she'd have her head in a pillow and she'd be trying not to cry, and she would say she was miserable and she didn't know what to do, and the only thing that made her happy was actually when she played in LCS, and she just wanted to win, and she wanted to be, but couldn't cope with all this other stuff. And you know, she literally was, the running joke was she would ask me if I would kill her, if I would take the pillow and kill her, and you know, it was fucking awful, and she was like trying to be gallows humor, and it just broke my heart to see somebody this fucked up. And then that was when I noticed she was having self-harm, scars on her arms, and lots of them. She would fucking really cut herself up badly, and everybody knew this was happening. You could see it. You know, she wore long sleeve t-shirts, but they would roll up, and nobody did a fucking thing. I mean, nobody did a thing. Nobody gave a fuck, actually. Everybody's attitude in the house was, Maria is unstable and we need her to play, so let's not address the elephant in the room, that she is clearly not fit to play in a league in this environment. She was, she'd just come off a huge fucking surgery, and she was even wearing like a body truss, I guess, like a support suit to help with the healing. She was in constant pain. And she was playing all this time. This is why I can't ever fucking see the League of Legends community as anything but just fucking slime, because I used to read the comments when she was like playing her games, and people were like, God, she's just not good enough to play at this level. She was either in absolute agony the entire time because she was recovering from this surgery, or dosed up on painkillers to get rid of the pain. It was one of the two. That was the state she was in for that season. And no, you know, she never used that as an excuse. She felt terrible every time she you know, the team lost. She felt like she was letting people down. She was like also the like middle of the game shot caller and stuff. She was trying to do everything she could to contribute, and people just shit on her. And the self-harm stuff, I was like saying, well, like, Maria, you know, look, we can get you out. We can talk to people. Just come with me. And she was like, I can't. My team needs me. I need to stay here. I can't let them down. I can't let Chris down after everything he's done for me. But she was just taking knives to herself and scissors and razor blades and I was talking to people outside of the house, and I was like, listen, you know, this is bad. Like, somebody's got to come in and help. And like nobody wanted to, man. Like, just nobody wanted to. And everything was just fucked up. Like, nothing got done properly. So like when I said to Chris, these people never leave the house. These people legitimately don't go out. You've got to change that. He organized a team building exercise where they went to the gym together. Now think about this and understand why this is so fucking stupid. First of all, she's recovering from a major surgery and is in constant pain and is supposed to be resting. Second of all, that's a very macho, male-oriented team building, isn't it? To go to the gym. And then third, imagine if you felt like you couldn't go outside. Imagine if you felt like you couldn't go outside. It was her worst fear was to be like looked at. And you say, hey, let's all go to the gym publicly and lift weights and grunt. And I was like, Chris, dude, you cannot be serious. And she said she wouldn't go and wouldn't do it. And then Chris fucking would just lay it on about, oh, you're letting the team down. Are you in this team or are you out of this team? Like, just laying on all this emotional fucking blackmail on her. And I was like, Chris, this is fucking beyond. This is beyond anything. So by this point, I couldn't abide Chris. There was other things going on. But I couldn't abide him. I could not abide the way he was behaving. But I didn't let my mask slip because I wanted to go back and see Maria and make sure she was okay. And it was always my plan to get her out. I would have got them all out if I could. I couldn't. But my plan from this, from very early on was make sure Maria gets out that house, whatever I have to do. Because she was going to seriously hurt herself or die. And I cannot think about that. So, I had a plan. And and the plan was to go back and stay there until I knew she would be all right. That was it. And that was why I kept going back to that house, because she was in real trouble. Okay, just give me a minute. So I had made a promise to myself that no matter what was happening, I would go back and I would get her out. And that is what I planned to do. But while I was doing this, it was just getting worse. The situation was just getting worse and worse. There was an instance where, keep in mind, Maria has said to me and said to everybody, please do not take my picture, please. Like, it took so much courage from her to even be on camera for LCS. She agreed to that indignity. She didn't want to do it, but she knew she would have to play with the cameras on her. She didn't feel comfortable, but she put herself into that spotlight every time, because she knew it's what she had to do for the team. And then Chris would be like, hey, I want you to do an interview with this publication. And she didn't want to do any of this shit, and he was just saying every time you don't do this, you are letting me down, because he wanted to market her, and you know, and then there was this day when they did a photo shoot, and they were doing a video. I think it was where they had Alex Itch as the king, and everybody carried it, and she just didn't want to be there. She said, "Look, I'm sorry, I just don't feel like I can do this mentally." And Chris and everybody else, all the management, were like, "Maria, you're part of the team. You have to do this. It's non-negotiable." And they were making her fucking say lines, and she didn't want to do any of it. And I was there for the entire photo shoot, and afterwards they filmed it, and then they said, "Okay, we're not going to use any of it, don't worry." And she was so emotionally fucking drained. We were coming back in the car. She was in the back seat, and she was curled up in a ball. I'm sat here, she sat here, and she's crying. And Chris and somebody else, they were just in the car. Like, it was so surreal. They were listening to the these are the details. They were listening to the Hamilton fucking soundtrack, the songs, and discussing it. And she was just in the background. Nobody said anything. Nobody did anything. They just, oh, it's just Maria. Like, they just left her to it. And I made them pull over. I, like, pretended I needed a leak. So I made him pull over to the gas station. I, like, got her, like, some tissues and some stuff. And I just can't believe how fucking cold these people were, man. Like, they just didn't give a fuck, dude. Like, they just didn't care. They legitimately did not care that she was in this bad shape. And there was a ton of other stuff. Like I say, she was saying she was going to die and kill herself and all this. And it was just fucking unreal that nobody wanted to help. So I was the, you know, I'm no fucking, you know, I'm a flawed person, right? But this was too much. This was like, if I don't do anything else in my life, at least I did this. And I'm a type of person, I will insert myself if situations are bad. I will. And for good or ill. And I did it. I started telling her, we're going to get you out and you've got to leave the team. And she didn't want to. And then I said to her, you cannot stay this way, please. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to be in Atlanta. If you leave, if you leave now, you can come and live with me until whenever you want. And there'll be no strings attached. I don't want anything in return. I just want you to be okay. And she eventually said, oh, fine, let's do this. And she took a leap of faith on me as a person. She had no reason to do that. She didn't know me. I could have been another asshole. So then, when she told Chris she wanted to leave, fuck me. And the shit that happened in the aftermath of that was so fucking bad. There was, I think on the initial instance when she announced it to him, and I wasn't there. I'd had to come back to the UK, I think, to start sorting out my visa application because I was getting this E-League job, and I wasn't there. And what happened was Chris had gone into a room, and it was shouting and screaming at her and saying, how could you do this to me? And he was threatening to fucking, sue her. And he was going to withhold her salary to pay for the surgeries. And it was somebody else in the house had to physically remove him from the room. So I'm in another country and I'm getting told this shit by her and by other people in the house that it's really jumping off, that, Chris is really pissed off. And I'm like, I feel fucking helpless, I'm like promising this person I'm going to get them out and save them, and this shit's fucking terrible, and I'm not there. And I'm fucking climbing the walls, dude. Like, I'm fucking so fucking angry and scared that I'm going to let somebody down. And she she anyway, that settled down, and then she started organizing a replacement. She picked out Hakuo, I think it was. And then Chris was like so upset, he just said, like, I'm gonna put you on the fucking streets, like, I'm gonna kick you out. You're not a player for the team anymore, so you need to be out of this house. Now, I needed a few weeks, I need, a month maybe, to get shit together, because I had to get my visa, I had to get out to America, I had to get my own place. I wasn't in a position to offer her a home, and Chris wanted to just expedite getting her out the house. I had to beg and plead him to let her stay. And then as a punishment, he took her and made her share. She had to go in a room with two other guys. And again, just imagine it. Just imagine the fucking humiliation. There's no privacy. You've got to do this post-surgical care every day. And you can't, there's no alone time. But Chris kicked her out of her own room just out of spite, and he justified it to me by saying, well, she's not a team, so what obligation do I have to put her up in a fucking room? And I was just like, just decency, just human fucking decency, maybe. So she was punished for saying she was gonna leave. And again, we tried to reach out to Monty while all this was happening, and Monty was busy, as I said at the start of the video. He was just not there, not present. So I don't think he knew what was going on or how bad it was, and he definitely seemed shocked when I told him all about it. After we came to Atlanta, we started getting her like doctors and getting her the medicine she needed. We got her on antidepressants to treat her depression. Fuck, this is so hard to talk about, guys. Like, God, what a pussy. And we started looking at surgery to fix the surgery that it was fucked up, to try and fix the constant pain. We looked at doctors and specialists, and we're still doing that. And I took the jobs I took to get the money to help her, that was what we did. And then she started to feel a lot better, and she wanted to come back and play. And she played in, for a couple of South American teams, I think a Brazilian team and a Chilean team. And I acted as a proxy and negotiated with Monte Cristo to get her out of a contract because she had a non-compete clause in there, which was really fucking egregious. And it was like, it wasn't just LCS, it was like any league team. I teed off at Monty at the time. I was fucking so angry with everything that was happening to this person. Me and Monty haven't spoke since this shit went down. And I was like, I said some pretty, I told him, I said some pretty harsh shit to him, and I regret it. But I was so fucking, I had to fight for her. And so when you do that, you make everybody the fucking enemy, right? Like, I just had to be vicious because I'd seen so much shit. And I know I'm not even fucking scratching the surface. I'm probably missing out a bunch of stuff. The recurring themes, the cliff notes, were just this, that she wasn't mentally or physically well enough to play. She was being pressured into playing. The team as a whole was being overworked and treated appallingly. And she was cracking under that stress, whether she knew it or not. And she was self-harming. And no one was getting her a doctor or referring her to help or getting her medicine or addressing it. She had terrible anxiety. She used to say to me, like, I'd be like, we're going to go to Atlanta and we're going to have a great life. Like, you're going to see, we're going to go out and we're going to meet people and we're going to do things. And she was like, how can I ever go outside like this? And fuck me, like, how... to be so fucking heartless that no one in that house wanted to fucking just help her out as a human sure, you know, yeah, teammates, woo, big fucking deal. There was some really profound problems that were not addressed. And there was, like I say, there was just a bunch of other shit. The bottom line is that Maria she couldn't play, and she was forcing herself to play, and she was being emotionally blackmailed into playing because this person had given her the one thing she thought she wanted at the time more than anything else, and therefore she felt obliged to do this, to put herself through this. And I've never seen anything this horrific. It is shocking to me that this happened. And it still is. I can't believe it. And I would be mortified if this was happening to anybody else or anything close to it. So, yeah, I probably have rambled. I don't fucking know. Like I say, this is really hard for me to talk about. I don't even know if I'm going to put this out as it is. I might re-record it. I've said that before. But people need to understand that the sanitized version of what was going on in that house that was presented to the public was an absolute outrageous fucking lie. And this was a player in mental distress, in physical pain, and people were not helping. Riot were not helping. Sure, they didn't know, and as soon as they did, they did what they did, but it was too fucking late to help her. And you know, other team owners didn't. There was one guy, actually. There was one person who helped, and we got her out of the house, and we got her into another house temporarily until I got my place in Atlanta, and we lived together for a few months in another part of America. And I'm always going to be grateful to the person who helped me with that. I was able to call in that favor because, as a journalist, you know, you build up your markers. And I had one. I had a favor to call in, and I was able to call it in and get her out. So that's it. You know, I don't know what this does to the complexion of the picture. I don't know if people even think any of this is bad. I saw some absurd comments on Reddit. Trust me, this was fucking heinous. I have never seen anything like it. I have been to team houses all over the world. I have written about esports for years, over a decade. I have covered all sorts of stories. This was beyond anything I've ever seen. I pray I never see anything like this again. The good news is this story had it had a happy ending this time, and it might not have. And it just scares me. You know, if I'd not been around, if I'd not gone, I try not to think about it. So there, anyway, that's the story. That's the bullshit.